If you're wanting to learn how to start mixing and mastering your vocals, but you don't know where exactly to start with all the different types of plugins and things like that, then you came to the right video. In this video, I'm going to be specifically focusing on compression, and this is a very vital part in learning how to take your vocal from this.
I can't make myself fall in love. I never feel like enough.
To this.
Feel like you want change, like the wind up, but build me up. That's what makes it hard to fall in love. Tear me apart, but build me up. That's what makes it hard to fall in love.
What's up, everybody? Thank you for clicking on the video. As I said before, this is going to be one part in a bigger series of teaching people how to mix and master their own vocals. But in this specific episode, we're going to be focusing on compression. So let's get right into it. Okay, so I'm going to be using FL Studio, but these same principles will work in any other DAW. If you just follow the main idea of what I'm talking about, you should be all good. Okay, but with that out of the way, let's get into it. Okay, so I'm not going to be showing you my full vocal mix. I have many other videos that show my full vocal mix, but in this video, we're just going to be focusing on how you can compress your vocals. So if you want to check out another video, you can click the card up here, or I'll have it linked in the description. Okay, so before I get into actually showing you how to compress your vocals, it's important to understand how the compressor actually works and what it's doing to better understand how to use it. Okay, so what a compressor does and what it's mainly used for is it allows you to balance out all the levels of volume in your vocal recording. So let's say you have a part where you're singing louder and a part where you're singing quieter. You can use a compressor to make those levels all the same and make the vocal recording balance the whole way through. So knowing that, all these settings should make a lot more sense. Okay, so right here, as you see, when you open up your compressor, there's a lot of different settings right here. And this is the FL Studio stock one, but if you have a different DAW, the stock plugin should look pretty similar, or any other sort of plugin that you bought or just downloaded. But anyways, as you can see right here, we have threshold, ratio, gain, attack, release, and then on this specific plugin, it's called type. This is just like saying the type of compression you're doing. This isn't going to be on every single plugin, but it's just on the FL Studio one, so you don't really need to worry about this one. But yeah, these 5 up here are the few settings that we're really going to dive into. So the first one right here is threshold. So what the threshold does is it's basically like a threshold or barrier for the vocal recording. So if you want to turn down the highest parts, all you have to do is take the threshold down below those highest peaks of volume, and it'll completely cut those peaks out. So that's what the threshold does. Now, the ratio is basically like how much compression you're adding. So the farther you turn the ratio up, the more compression it's going to add. So if you turn the ratio super far up, it's just going to completely and harshly take out anything above the threshold. But if you turn it down and kind of blend it in more, it's going to make the compression a little bit more subtle. And in my opinion, it sounds better when the ratio isn't too high. Now right here, the gain slot, as many of you probably know, is just used to turn the volume up. Now typically on a basic compression, I don't really play with this knob too much, but if you want to account for some of the volume that you lost when compressing it, then you can play with the gain a little bit if you want to. Now the next 2 settings that are really important are the attack and release. Now what the attack does is it basically determines how fast the compression is going to kick in when one of those peaks of volume goes over the threshold. So if I turn the attack all the way up on this plugin, the compression would kick in at 400 milliseconds, as you can see right here. But like I said before with the ratio, it's better to really blend this in and make it not too much and not too little. And same thing with the release, but instead this accounts for how long the compression is going to hold on to that part of the vocal recording. So again, if I turn this knob all the way up, the compression is going to hold on to that part of the vocal recording for 4,000 milliseconds. And again, you don't want it to be that long. So just blend it in until you like the sound of it, and you should be good. And then like I said before, we don't really need to talk about the type of compression because this won't come on every single plugin. But if you are using FL Studio, I usually just use the soft or vintage settings. I just like the way they sound, but you can use any setting you want. It really just comes down to preference. Okay, so now that we understand how this plugin works, I'm going to show you how you can compress your vocals. So right here on this vocal recording that I showed before, I just have an auto tune and an EQ on it. If you want to learn how to EQ your vocals, I just put a whole video up on how to do that, so you can go check that out after this video. But yeah, I usually EQ my vocals before I compress them, so that would definitely be a good video to watch. But anyways, now that we already have an EQ on it, we can start with the compression process. So the first thing that I do on all my compressions is turn the ratio up to where I like it. Now, figuring out where you like your ratio can come with some trial and error and how you just prefer your vocals to sound. But I usually put mine from about 3:1 to 4:1 on the ratio right here. And now once we have a ratio set, we can start playing with the threshold. Now, if you don't play with the threshold at all, the ratio is not going to do anything. So this is what it sounds like before I even played with the threshold at all.
I can't make myself fall in love. I never feel like enough.
So yeah, as you can see in these parts of the vocal where it peaks a little bit, it does get a little bit loud. So compression is going to be perfect for that. So I'm just going to start playing with the threshold until it starts to affect the vocal.
I can't make myself fall in love. I never feel like enough, but yeah.
So I think around negative 22.2 decibels is where I start to hear the compressor sort of turning down those peaks in volume in the vocal recording. So I think I'm going to leave it at about right here. And then the ratio obviously stays the same. I don't think I'm going to play with the gain on this first compressor, but here the attack and release, I have the attack relatively low just because I like the compression to start to affect the vocal pretty soon. And then for the release, I'm going to turn this up a little bit more than the attack because I want it to hold on to the vocal long enough so that it gives the attack time to kick in. And then for this specific song, I'm just going to put the type of compression at soft. Again, if you're not using FL Studio, you probably will not have this setting, but if you are using FL Studio, this is what I'm going to do. You can do whatever you want though. So yeah, that's basically all I do for my first main compressor on my lead vocal. So that took the vocal from this.
I can't make myself fall in love. I never feel like enough.
To this.
I can't make myself fall in love. I never feel like enough.
So as you can see, it really turns down those peaks and it also allows the vocal to feel more balanced and professional. So yeah, then I add a couple of plugins in between like Fresh Air, another EQ, a limiter, and a Maximus. And then I'll add my second compressor on the vocal. So what this one looks like is honestly pretty similar to the first one. What I do is I do the same thing with the ratio, put it at about 3:1. Just for my vocal, but you can use whatever ratio you prefer. And then threshold, same thing, I just do it until it starts to affect the vocal. This threshold is probably going to be a little bit less though, as you already compressed the vocal once. So this one, it was at negative 19.7 decibels and the first one was at negative 22. So as you can see, it's just a little difference, but you don't have to compress it as much on the second one as you already did it in the first one. And then the attack and release were pretty much at the same settings. And then I just turned the gain up 1 decibel because I wanted to turn up the vocal just a little bit as it kind of felt quiet to me. But again, this is just a preference thing and you don't have to do this on every compressor. So this second compressor really doesn't make a massive difference. It's kind of just for finishing touches and it helps balance out the vocal a little bit more towards the end of the mix. So yeah, this is what the full mix would sound like without both of those compressors.
I can't make myself fall in love. I never feel like enough.
And then with both of those compressors,
I can't make myself fall in love. I never feel like enough. But
so just a little bit more balanced and quiet, and it really takes the volume of those peaks and turns them down so the levels are all the same and balanced. So yeah, that's the end of the full basic mix with the compressors. But as you can hear, once I start playing this with the beat, it does sound a little quiet.
I can't make myself fall in love. I never feel.
So what I can do to help this is add something called parallel compression. Now, parallel compression is a way better method of turning up the volume of your vocal recording as opposed to just cranking the gain on your vocal, because if you crank the gain on a vocal, it'll just distort the vocal and it just won't sound good. So I'm going to show you exactly how I parallel compress my vocals. So right here, what I'm going to do is add another bus right next to the main mix. And what is going to be on this bus is another compressor, the same plugin I used before, but instead what we're going to do here is parallel compress the vocal. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So right here with the ratio, I usually like to crank it a little bit higher than I did for the basic compression, but I put it about 7:1. And then for the threshold, I crush it down pretty hard, probably about negative 30 decibels. And then what you want to do is really crank the gain. For mine, I'm going to do probably about plus 10 decibels. Now what this is going to do is it's going to allow you to turn up the volume of your vocal, but also compress it at the same time so it's not distorted. So it's basically just like creating a double of the vocal, and it allows it to be louder without being distorted. And then for the attack and release, I'm just going to leave them relatively similar to the one I did before, and then type soft right here. So now what you want to do is route the basic mix to this bus and listen to how it sounds. So this is how it sounds before the parallel compression.
I can't make myself fall in love. I never feel like enough.
And this is with the parallel compression.
I can't make myself fall in love. I never feel like enough.
So yeah, those are the two biggest ways that I use the compressor plugin. I really hope this video helped you out and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please drop a like. Also, drop your artist name in the comments because I want to hear your guys' vocal mixes. Again, thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next video.
I can't make myself fall in love. I never feel like enough. But yeah, treat me so good when we're together. You make me feel like you want change like